Welcome to Classroom Quest K12, where the art of teaching embarks on an epic gaming adventure. I'm your host, Stephanie Segroves, bringing over a decade of teaching experience to this educational quest. This podcast is a rallying point for educators, combining the thrill of gaming with transformative teaching strategies. Here we use the Mastery Gamification methodology to overcome student apathy and engage students in their own hero journey. So grab a cup of coffee and get ready, because you and I are about to launch our quest. Hey teacher friend, I'm glad you're here, and thank you for tuning into Classroom Quest K12 today. This is part 1 of our mini-series on quest builders. In this mini-series, I'm going to give you the building blocks required to create your first Mastery Gamified unit to engage your students and increase academic expectations. But before we get into the details of that, let's look at the big picture first. Most teachers believe that with enough time, effort, and support, any student can learn anything, and we see few exceptions to this belief. We likely wouldn't have gone into teaching if we didn't believe this. But that begs the question, what systems do we have in place to support this belief? How do we give the students the amount of time, motivation, and support that they need to learn the material? Mastery Gamification can help put this system in place. If I were to summarize all the science and research behind Mastery Gamification on academic performance, engagement in the classroom, making good decisions, grit, growth mindset, counteracting learned helplessness, and self-efficacy, there's a common thread that pulls them all together. It is this: students have to believe that they have the ability to think for themselves, that they have the ability to do well, and they have the ability to make responsible choices for their education. They have to believe that they are the owners of their own agency in order to use that agency. They have to feel like they have some control in their lives to actually use the control that they have in their lives. Psychologists call this an internal locus of control. That students believe that the ability to control their situation resides inside themselves. So, in education, how do we teach them that they have control over their lives? The answer is both ridiculously simple and extremely difficult. We have to put the students in control. The way we do this entirely depends on how the teacher approaches their role in the classroom. Now, imagine, as a teacher, you walk into a colleague's classroom, looking for the teacher to ask about some paperwork that is due soon. You know it's test day, so it should be easy to pop in quick while the students are silently sitting doing their tests. You walk in and are surprised to see the class working in pairs or small groups, quizzing each other on the material they recently learned. You find the teacher in the back of the room, verbally quizzing a student on the material. You pause for a second to wait for the teacher to be done. As you're waiting, the teacher says something with a smile to the student. The student lifts his arms up and happily exclaims in victory, "Yes, let's go!" Then he practically skips back to his seat. You approach the teacher and ask what the student was so excited about. The teacher tells you he just passed his unit test. You ask, why is he so excited about that? It's just a test. The teacher says, it means he's just leveled up and he'll get his badge for defeating the boss. This is why gamification works. You reply with a confused, huh? While this scene can be confusing to an outsider, this student reaction is a very common occurrence in the Mastery Gamified classroom, illustrating why gamification works. Students visibly get excited and celebrate passing tests because it's more than just passing a test. In a Mastery Gamified classroom, passing the test means that you have completed the level at the minimum mastery standard or above. You have defeated the boss, the bad guy, for that level. You have leveled up and can progress to the next level, and you will be receiving your badge for that level very soon. This represents a lot of work on the student's part, which deserves to be celebrated. So they celebrate. I will often hear joyful exclamations of, "Let's go!" or "I passed!" often accompanied by a little fist bump or jump in the air. all for passing a test. If you think you would like to see this type of energy and engagement in your classroom, I'll tell you how to create your first mastery gamified level or unit for your classroom. To start, I'm going to assume that you already have a curriculum based on the standards that you like and use. Now, if you do not, I have helped teachers create their own standards-based curriculum, and I would be happy to help you with that. However, today is assuming you have a good curriculum that you intend to keep. The first step to creating your first mastery gamified level is ensuring that your administrator is on board with this objective. While the mastery gamification methodology has a lot of scientific evidence behind it, and I have a previous podcast episode if you want to go back and check that out, some parents and administrators are reluctant to jump on board until they see it working in your classroom. They're often curious about why gamification works. The important thing is that when parents are confused and not sure why you're teaching this way, your administrator has your back. Once your administrator is on board, it's time to have some fun. We get to create the story outline for your gaming narrative. This is the big picture story to give you an idea of where you want your story to go. First, we must decide what genre of story you would like to create. This depends on your interests and sometimes the subject you teach. Do you like sci-fi or fantasy? What about adventure? Would you prefer mystery or maybe historical fiction? As a Spanish teacher, I chose an adventure story. I helped a math teacher who chose sci-fi. And I'm helping a history teacher who's going for historical fiction. Once you have your genre, the next element to decide is your setting and characters. For your characters, you'll need a role or title or job for the hero of the story, who is the student. Remember, the student is the hero. It's also helpful to have a companion that will travel with your hero. This makes it easier in the writing when you're writing the stories because you'll have a character that you can name. Because you can't actually name the hero because the hero is different for every student. You'll also need a wise and experienced guide. Some teachers enjoy writing themselves into the story as the guide. But you can also write a fictional guide if you don't want to write yourself into the story. The last character you'll need is a big boss and minions that students will boss battle to level up. Or you could use obstacles for students to overcome if you don't want them to battle. For my Spanish 1 class, I chose an adventure fantasy genre, and I made the hero a luchador monster hunter. So the students take the role of that luchador monster hunter. Luchadores are from lucha libre, which is Mexican masked wrestling. So I get to introduce the character at the beginning of the year, learning about a cultural tradition in Mexico of Mexican masked wrestling. Then I made the hero a monster hunter because my bosses are mythical legends from Spanish-speaking countries like La Llorona and El Chupacabra, which demonstrates why gamification works by directly engaging students with culturally rich narratives. I also have a big boss that students will boss battle at the end of the year. This big boss is another luchador monster hunter who has gone rogue, and he's reviving the legendary monsters instead of vanquishing them like he swore to do. For my guides, I have a different fictional expert on the boss that the students are battling that level. The guide teaches the luchador monster hunters the enchanted words, which just so happen to be Spanish vocabulary, and incantations, which just so happen to be Spanish grammatical structures, that they will need to defeat the boss at the end of that level. I worked with a middle school math teacher who went sci-fi. She decided that math was all about order and logic. So together, we created her big boss, the Kaos King. He looks like an orange octopus that wears a top hat, and he is from the 5th dimension. He has come to the 3rd dimension, our dimension, to unleash his chaos on our dimension and destroy it. He has minions that he sends, like the Fraction Fracturer and Graphon the Grid Wrecker. Each minion tries to unleash chaos to destroy our dimension, and the students, titled Logic Lords, must use their application of math to power up the Reality Stone and use its power to banish the bosses back to the 5th dimension before they destroy our dimension. This teacher also wrote herself into the story as the guide. Her character is Mathematica, and she has faced the Kaos King previously, when she narrowly escaped the 2nd dimension as the Kaos King destroyed it. This teacher is amazing, and she even put together a costume, complete with a red cape, to become her character, Mathematica. I also worked with a high school teacher who teaches a leadership and character class, and he decided to make his students into secret agents for the Secret Social Service. Their mission? To seek out and battle the character vices that keep the population from being their best selves. The secret social agents have a 6th sense to be able to locate vices like procrastination, hostility, hate, apathy, and many more. They fight these bosses with their spy gadgets that are powered by character traits like patience, kindness, or leadership. We had a lot of fun creating the spy gadgets that students are using, and we have great images for each gadget as well as an analysis of what the gadget does and what situations it's most useful for. This teacher also wrote himself into the story as Chief Agent DC, and he will be leading the new recruits in their training to become secret social agents. Now, for the elementary teachers out there, don't worry. All these battles and monsters may be sounding too aggressive for your elementary students, and I agree, this is true. If you don't want your students fighting a boss to complete a level, you can make the boss battles to be challenges instead of monsters that students are fighting. For example, the mission for a kindergarten classroom could be that all the books in the library have been launched all over the world, and the students must complete tasks to find the books and bring them back to the library. To find the book on Anne's Awesome Animals, the students might have to complete their practice on letter A, which will open a secret door revealing the location of the lost book. Once they collect all the lost books from the library, they celebrate. Once you have the overall story outline created with your location and characters, it's just a matter of breaking it down into individual levels that correspond with each unit. Each level should have a specific boss or challenge that students have to beat, or a challenge that they have to complete to show their mastery, finish the level, and level up. Before you write the gaming narrative for each level, it's helpful to know how students will show their mastery of the level, showcasing why gamification works by aligning game mechanics with educational outcomes. If you have a good curriculum that has a good unit test that accurately reflects student learning and is based on your subject standards, feel free to use that. However, even if you have a good curriculum, the assessments are often not quite up to the teacher's standards. If this is the case in your classroom, there are some good alternatives. When I Mastery Gamified my Spanish 1 class, I simply converted my standards into I can statements, and I created my assessments from those I can statements. This resulted in an assessment that had elements of reading, writing, speaking, and listening in the assessment based on the standards for what students should be able to do at that level. A lot of teachers like to have students complete a project that shows their mastery of the material. This provides a kinesthetic way for students to show all that they've learned. When creating or deciding the assessment for the level, the other thing you'll need to decide is the minimum mastery level that students must achieve to complete the level. The level that you choose for your class is dependent on many factors. The minimum mastery level should be a challenge for students, but still a level that everyone can eventually achieve. Part of the magic of the mastery gamification methodology is that it engages students, but the real magic is its ability to raise classroom expectations for academic work. When students have a goal higher than just passing to aim for, they will often achieve that higher standard. When teachers ask what the minimum mastery level should be, I usually recommend between 70 to 85%. I've set my minimum mastery level for my Spanish classes at 75%. This results in a C, which should be a challenge, but still achievable for everyone with enough time, effort, and support. Depending on your student population, you may set the minimum mastery level higher or lower than 75%. But I don't recommend going below 70%. That'd be a C minus. Once the minimum test level goes below 70%, it becomes a stretch to call it mastery. All right, time for a quick review. Can't help it, I'm a teacher. When you're ready to start creating your first Mastery Gamified unit, you first need to be sure that your administrator is on board. Despite all the benefits to students, the system is usually something new and different and can be confusing for parents. Once your administrator is on board, it's time to create your gaming story outline. Your outline should include your genre, setting, and the overall mission for the hero to accomplish. You'll also need to decide your characters. You'll need a hero, which is your student, a companion, a guide, and bosses or obstacles to defeat. Once you have the characters, you'll need to decide or create the test or task that students will complete to show their mastery. And you also need to decide the minimum mastery level. Once you've completed these steps, you are well on your way to creating your first Mastery Gamified unit, embodying why gamification works to enhance engagement and learning. I hope that this process is exciting and invigorating for you. I know it breathes new life into my teaching. However, if you want to level up your classroom but find this process stressful, I'd be happy to help you out. I've coached teachers to help them make their first Mastery Gamified unit for the classroom. Often, once the teacher has one unit under their belt, the process becomes much easier and they're able to make the following units on their own without any help. If you're interested, just send me an email at stephanie@segrovesstrategies.com. I hope to hear from you soon. Now it's time to see what's going on in a Mastery Gamified classroom. So, in my classroom, before I started my Mastery Gamified system, I would give students extra credit for things I wanted them to do. I feel like a lot of teachers do. But now that I'm doing a Mastery classroom, extra credit really takes away from the mastery for the grade, and I don't want to take away the power of mastery. However, that means that I lost my motivational tool to have students do tasks that I want completed. For example, in my Spanish classes, we would often have fiesta days on holidays in Spanish-speaking countries, like Dia de los Muertos, and I would give students extra credit for bringing in Hispanic food for our fiesta. Once I switched to mastery, I didn't want to offer extra credit anymore, so we started getting less food each fiesta. Now, I really like this task that students bring in Hispanic food for our fiesta days because they get the experience of researching and cooking a new food that they may not have tried before, and also the rest of the class gets to try a new food as well. But I didn't want to make it a grade because a lot of my students don't have the resources to bring in food for the whole class, so my extra credit system was working well for what I needed. However, I found a way after I Mastery Gamified my classroom to motivate students to do this project. I divided the class into questing parties for the semester. I made the groups initially and made sure that the groups had various ability levels in each group to make it more fair for everyone. I had students create a group name and a group coin that they would all have to identify themselves as a member of that party. Once the parties were set up, the competition began. I gave out ranking points to parties whose members did tasks that I previously offered extra credit for. I have a list of the parties and I rank them in order of how many ranking points they have earned. Apparently, most students love competing in groups against each other. In fact, it was so successful that I started offering ranking points for other things, like which party got the most questions correct on the translation activity. Honestly, it's been a game changer. Students are encouraging members of their parties to do tasks that will earn the ranking points, which improves the experience for everyone. The great part is, my students' motivation has increased, and their grade still reflects their mastery of the material. Not extra credit, extra projects, extra hoops they're willing to jump through as a substitute for mastery. I've promised my students that the top 2 ranking groups in each hour will receive either pizza or donuts at the end of the semester, and the rest of the class has to sit there and smell it. Talk about motivating. Now, teachers, it's time to heed the call of the quest. Get ready and gear up. Your Master Teacher Quest is here, only for those bold enough and brave enough to try. Your Master Teacher Quest for this week is to think about the genre, characters, story outline, and mastery, boss battle, or challenge that you would like for your classroom gaming narrative. Consider your subject, age group, and your own interests, because while we want it to be exciting and appropriate for your students, you're the one who will be leading it, so make sure it's a story that you enjoy too. Jot down your ideas in a Word document, and then look for next week's episode for part 2 of Quest Builders, where we learn more about how to create your first mastery gamification level. And there you have it. Now that you know the importance of stories and how stories impact student engagement in the classroom, I hope you can use this information to start thinking in the context of stories and how to leverage them for the benefits of your students. Until next time, remember, empowered teachers empower students, and empowered students learn. And if you want to schedule a meeting with me to see how we can customize the mastery gamification methodology to your grade and curriculum, find me at my Facebook, Instagram, or my website at segrovesstrategies.com. I'd love to help you level up your classroom to help you engage students. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time. Thank you for tuning in to Classroom Quest K12. If you're curious to learn more about the mastery gamification methodology or want to join the conversation, head over to my Facebook or Instagram. And if you know a teacher friend that would be interested in what you heard today, make sure to share this episode with them. Also, for those eager to see if this approach fits your teaching style, don't forget to sign up and get your free quiz at segrovesstrategies.com. Until next time, keep inspiring, keep teaching, and keep making a difference.